have evolved up to the last one of them, where everything is stuck at that last level of thought action we may call will thought action, or perhaps what Nietzsche would call the will to power. Our hero, Professor Noodle, fell out of a career in military medicine, having tried to conform. In the effort he took, assisted by the military, to make him a real man, the failure did something else. As he nearly died, he saw the Big Bang, or imagined he saw it, and he imagined talking to other beings in time and space who have the 12 thought actions fully matured, and learned of the unidentified but otherwise very good entity which formed the universe from 21 pounds of pure substance, seeking to express good and perfect creation in life. So, Professor Noodle, assisted by his new ability, which accidentally formed experience, the power of pan-dimensional imagination, seeks to understand life and explore truth. These episodes are the continuing saga in the Essay on Existence by Professor Noodle.
Back about 1998, when I was working as an educator out in the Northeast, students suggested that I should hold in mind that in the future I might get a chance to be doing some real, actual acting somewhere on television and or movies. And the joke was that I sort of looked like Superman anyway. I was younger then. At any rate, in the year 2000, I had the opportunity to do a skit or two for what's called public access television. And that would be to a subscription of 60,000 subscribers in a single municipal area. And so I thought, well, you know, this would be a chance to, because I had just moved and I needed to present a countermeasurement to the allegation that I could not actually speak intelligently on any subject. I was not a very good rhetorician as such. And needing a new chance at a full-time teaching position, I figured I'd apply my trade a bit through public access television. And so I did. But this was before video television was commonly being put out on the internet. And as the years continued, about 2004 or 2005, there was an impact on my career choices and options through nobody's fault, just the way things and the timing of things occurred, so that there was more and more internet sharing of who's doing what and what is your opinion of them. One thing that is sort of true throughout human history and human society is this tendency to slip to the negative, so that in politics you win by pointing out what's wrong with the other guy. You don't win by proving that you're the best candidate, really. You win by proving what's wrong with the other choices. You win by saying something like, well, you got two choices. You can either go for not having this stopped, having this closed down, and having this defunded, which just what that guy is saying. Or you can go for having programs that are going to help you here, that are going to help you here, that help your grandpa here, and that help your local school district here by voting for me. And that's the way people win, is we have this tendency in human nature to slip to the negative, whether it's to win a political election or it's to keep a job, to find and keep a job. Now, therefore, that Professor Noodle is now on the internet was not actually originally the idea of the director, producer, and actor, the creator of the Professor Noodle show. But that the internet unstoppably becomes this medium of communication and information that it is, and that the original countermeasure, which was to stop professional gossip against a public speaker, as if to say he has nothing to say and he has no skills, it is sort of like when Khan in the Star Trek movie says, in reply, his son says, "Why are we doing this?" And he says, "Because he tasks me." And it's a terrible metaphor of an example, but what I'm saying is, the negative gossipers task me with doing a countermeasure of some kind on their attempt to gainsay, and so the result is, when they say, "You can't do this," then I just go, "Okay, well, I'll do this." And so timing is an interesting thing, not only in my life, in your life. And what I'm saying is, it's something to hold in mind, the aspect of timing. Sometimes people gravitate in the tendency of the human condition. We are conservative, cautious, edge of the forest, edge of the higher grasses, hunter-gatherers, and we are by nature cautious and suspicious, because there might be a lion in that tall grass, or there might be a snake right in the shadow of those shade trees. There might be. So it is human nature. We have a tendency to look out for the lion in the grass. Okay? The possible negative possibility that's out there. We have a tendency to look out for that. That is an adaptation to the intelligence that you and I contain. Understanding it is going to help you better cope with your life. Right? So, looking back a little farther than 1998 or 2000, I want to remind that the evidence shows that in 1929, immediately before Social Security was created, about 40% of the population of the workforce in the United States of America retired, being forced by their situation to rely upon charity and church organizations and benevolent organizations in states in order to not starve to death and be homeless. 40% of the workforce population that retired dependent upon charity. Now, Social Security was created as a federal plan in order to provide a more stable, reliable security in old age. When it was created, the life expectancy was 65 years. Okay? In the year 2001, a life expectancy of 78 years for men, and for women, a life expectancy of 84 years. So, more recently then, the situation of retirement is that you have to plan for retirement for about 20 years. So how are you going to do that with your deferred income from a pension? Be able to have a deferred income built up to cover you for 20 years. So if we go back and look at this historically, and in the social science concept of economics, and try to understand, we don't need to blame anybody. This isn't a conspiracy. This is about the realities of a planet with close to 7 billion people alive on the planet, which is, for a biological species, in social science terms, we are the most successful large-bodied social mammal species in the history of planet Earth. So let's not get negative about this. But in 1929, if you take the example of Uncle Ernie in It's a Wonderful Life, the movie It's a Wonderful Life, written from which is produced from a book from a play, and it does authentically depict the older worker, which in 1929 was depicted as a person who was addle-minded, clumsy, incompetent, okay? The younger worker was sharper, more agile, and more competent. That was the mindset in 1929. Now, so basically companies made up excuses and got rid of older workers. You were lucky if you were not one of the 40% or so that wound up depending upon charity in their old age to not be homeless and starving. So World War II comes along, and suddenly we need all the young able-bodied men to go serve in the military. All of a sudden, both women and older workers are no longer depicted as addle-minded, clumsy, and incompetent. And so there's a window of opportunity. The so-called glass ceiling has evaporated for a while. There is a more full employment of women and older workers, and that goes on until after World War II is done. Now, the situation changes again, flips again, after they all come home, because when those men come home, they have benefits from being veterans and having served, and they also have that society owes them a debt for their service, and so they come back, and once again the older worker is devalued, and companies pretty much come up with reasons and get rid of the older workers. But Social Security exists at this point, so it's not quite as bad as it was in 29. Nevertheless, because of the timing of things, the industrial manufacturing facilities in the United States have plenty of incentive and plenty of means. These industrial manufacturing centers, having been built up by government backing for war supplies production during the war, now coming into production of civilian products, tinsmithing and metallurgy and plastics and whatnot, fabrication, fiber fabrication, various things now going to civilian product production. Productivity is very high in the 50s. And so men coming back into this industrial manufacturing facility, they are able to get a lot of work done. In the 1950s, 40% of the population is in labor unions in the United States. So the 40-hour work week and having breaks and things like this. Pension plans for retirement. All these things are strongly in place in the 1950s in these newly refitted, retooled industrial manufacturing facilities that are going very productively in the United States in the windfall of development, infrastructure development, that came as a necessity with the Keynesian economics that built things up in the infrastructure to cope with the threat of World War II. So the windfall of all of that in the 50s, tremendously productive for the men that were younger than 65 that were working in this workforce, and mostly a large, substantial amount union. Okay? Today, less than 20% of the workforce is in the union, and most of those that are in the union are government employees to a large extent, because it was a law that the labor relations laws said that you couldn't fire somebody for attempting to organize a union. Okay? The reality is that enforcing that you didn't face any negative consequence from management in the company when you tried to organize a union, you have to get 30% to vote yes for union before it'll happen. And then you have to file something with the Labor Relations Board, National Labor Relations Board, NLRB, if you do get 30% to vote yes for union. Which is not likely to happen these days in a private company. That's just the reality. Why? Because around the planet, people are no longer content to be born in poverty and squalor, and they see by the global information network, the internet, that how other people are living in places like the United States, and they want that. So their countries offer a commodity they have, cheap labor, and so then international competition in work results in a work standard, a work style, a work lifestyle competition. It lowers the bar quite a bit. That's not anybody's plot or plan, or it's not a result of the Democrats or the Republicans or anything like this. This is just the timing of things, okay? And if you look at it realistically, it is actually not totally negative that people around the world don't want to sit on their tails in the mud, living in poverty and squalor with no hope to retire comfortably. No, they want to have that same kind of thing like we have with Social Security in the United States. They want to have that. That's not entirely negative. But at any rate, now the reality is, once again, for the available amount of jobs we've got, the older employee is like he was after the boys come home from World War II, and they're depicting the older employee as clumsy, incompetent, addle-minded, incapable of doing good quality work. That's what's happening to the older employees these days in this competition of things, both because of the cheapness of labor overseas that competes with the work lifestyle culture of our country now, and also because there's a lot of automation in manufacturing. And truth be known, since 2008, pensions from companies are not counted upon by the employee as a basis of either loyalty or any great sense of reassurance about the long-term future, because a lot of pensions went belly up in 2008. So the result is that workers in the United States face a lot of difficulty right now, and competition is pretty fierce. And so the result is we have people, early retirement was practically unheard of 20 years ago. Now, getting paid an amount of money to retire early is a common story. And the older worker is pushed out. And the available job positions, they go to the younger worker who in their work lifestyle has to compete with the international work lifestyle community that's up and coming and challenging, And so you don't have the 40-hour work week so much anymore. And you don't have a very attractive response from the young worker to unionize, because that would mean factors that management would see as a reason not to continue work lifestyle resource in the United States as compared to cheaper work lifestyles available to in the competition that is in the international work environment. All of this is just timing, my friend. And so we can't see it in a completely negative eyesight. We have to try to understand it. But here's the thing. The same technology that emancipates us in many ways has consequences. But we have to continue to embrace change, because the way that we're going to make it into a better future for all of us is to embrace change and continue to have confidence in ourselves and move forward. It's like a per diem teacher coming back to the state of his birth, and to counter gossip, he gives a few lectures on the local public access television to prove he can do rhetoric. He can talk on the subject for a while, and pretty soon it's out of control. It's on the internet, and once again it's trying to be used to get negative. And instead of retreating, he leans into that wind and says, well, I'm going to lean into this wind. If necessary, I'm going to spread my arms out and flap my arms and try to take flight in this wind, because I'm not going to let myself be pushed into a defeat mode of thinking by the fact that there's change. And so now I have producers and directors and project people calling me from other states, talking about the possibility of developing this whole project further. And they're speculators. I don't take it too seriously. Don't lose any sleep waiting for a call from Hollywood, in all honesty. But nevertheless, you do have to, even if you're old and you are actually beginning to face physical disability and things, don't just lie down and quit. Lean into that breeze, lean into that wind a bit. Try to find the way to embrace and accept in a non-combative, but nevertheless peacefully forward-moving trend of thinking. That's my suggestion to you. That's what I suggest to you in your life. Don't get pushy about it, but also don't allow a simply negative collapsing being pushed either. You know, it's an exchange. It's an exchange with the universe. The intelligence of consciousness as being that is you is in an exchange with the intelligence that is consciousness of being that is universe. It's an exchange. It's not meant to be destructive, really. It's meant to be evolving. So just keep affirming, keep growing, keep learning. Lean into it, proceed. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Professor Noodle Show.